Hey, welcome to day 3 of our 5 out of 4 agility tank sew along. Today we're just going to be sewing up the bra portion of this. So if all you're making is the sports bra, you will be done after today. But if you're going to continue on making the tank with us, then tomorrow we'll be putting the tank pieces together and attaching it to the sports bra. And then the last day we'll be adding our binding and then we'll be finished. So I guess, yeah, if you're doing the sports bra, you'll still want to put the binding on. But so for the bra portion today, I'm going to skip around a little bit in my steps. We're going to be adding the elastic today as well so that the bra is completely done. In the steps, they have you attach the tank and then put the elastic on. The only concern I have with that is that the more pieces of fabric I have on a piece when I'm trying to attach something else to a smaller piece, I get really nervous that it's going to get tucked in and wreak havoc. So I figured it's just best, let's just put the elastic on today and be done with the bra portion other than the binding, and easy peasy from there. So you will need your elastic if you haven't cut that yet. 3/4 inch elastic, cut to the right size. There's a chart in the pattern. So cut that out. You'll also need the T-back pieces, your front and liner. You'll need your bra back front and liner pieces and your bra front and liner pieces. All right, so let's get right into it today. This should be a fairly quick day, and I say that, and I know I say that a lot, and it turns out to be like a really long day, but this one should be pretty easy peasy. So to start with, it's 3/8 inch seam allowance. So what we need to do is, don't mind my scrolling. I was going through all the instructions because every time I don't do that, I mess up. If you're going to add the removable bra cups, follow the first few steps on how to do that. It's super easy, but I don't like the feel of them. They never work the way that I'd like them to. So what we need to do then is we need to take our bra front pieces, finding the right side here. So here's the right side of my bra front, and then the T-back pieces, we're going to put them right sides together, lining up these little shoulder bits here. And then using 3/8 inch seam allowance, we're just going to sew along to attach these shoulders. And you're going to do this to both the main lining, or the lining and the main fabric. So it doesn't really matter which one you do first, but since mine are both the same, it's not going to look different either. All right, so 3/8 inch seam allowance. Just that tiny little bit. If you're using a regular sewing machine instead of a serger, make sure that you're using a stretch stitch, lightning stitch, zigzag stitch, something that's going to be able to allow those seams to move without popping. If you're not sure what those stitches look like, there is an awesome blog up on the Ash and Elm site that explains it. So check that out, or that shows them too. So same thing with this other side, right sides together, matching up just this little shoulder piece. We're going to sew along that little end at 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so now we've attached the T-back to our main. We need to do the same thing to the lining. So we'll take our front. This fabric is so gorgeous. I hate sewing with just plain colored fabric though, because I always struggle when it's a solid color. I always struggle which side's front, which side's back. Whereas the designs, it's pretty easy to tell. So same thing, we're going to line up right sides together, these shoulder seams and 3/8 inch seam allowance. These scissors, I've sharpened them, but they still Probably just need to put them out with my quilter. Okay, same thing with the other side. Oof, I got all tangled around here. Always check that. Make sure that your seams you're not tangled up, and because they're such small pieces that it's pretty easy to get them twisted around, and then you have to redo it. Just always best to check before you actually start sewing. So match those little shoulder pieces up, make sure everything's not twisted, and 3-inch seam allowance. At least if you have to seam rip this, it's just a tiny area and not like half of a Duchess coat, jacket, skirt. Erg. Okay, so now that we've got our T-back attached to both of our tops, or our fronts, if you're doing the nursing bra, there's some other steps, some different steps, but so make sure to follow along in the instructions with those. Next, we need to take our front bra and back pieces and place them right sides together. So again, make sure that this isn't all twisted so you can easily tell. Goodness gracious. I am so terrible with this. Every time I sew little pieces, I always get them twisted. There we go. Okay, so we know then that this is the right side of our front. We don't need to worry about this back T piece right yet, so we're just going to kind of move it out of our way. We're not attaching it. We're going to lay the front of our bra right side up, and then we'll attach our back piece right sides together. So the wrong side of your back piece should be pointing up, and the right side should be laying on top of the right side of your fabric. So kind of like you're making a sandwich with the wrong side of the fabric, the right side, and then the wrong side. So the wrong side's kind of like your bread sticking out. I don't know. That might be a weird analogy for sewing. Maybe I'm hungry. I don't feel hungry. Okay, so we're just going to sew then along this edge. We're going to match these raw edges together on the side here, and we're just going to sew those up using a 3-inch seam allowance. I should mention, if you are using swim or athletic, even double brush poly, something that's kind of a little bit more slippery, you are going to want to use clips or pins. I know I hate when I have to do it, but it's just going to help it from not move too much. This swim is actually pretty fantastic. It's not doing. So sorry, we're doing the same thing to the other side, which I forgot I was doing a sew along and not just a hangout. So with the other side, we're just bringing again that edge over, the other edge over, and lining up those raw edges and then sewing along the seam. So in the end, you should have a piece that looks like this. So you've got your front then with the sides sewn to the back, and then your back piece. Hopefully you can see this pretty well. I don't know. There we go. And your back piece, it's not quite as wide as your front because you want it to come in a bit to hold things in. Plus you've got a little bit more space in the front that needs to be covered than in the back. Anyways, and then your T piece should not be attached yet. So it'll look like this. So your T piece won't be attached, but then your sides and your shoulder seams will. And then we need to do the same thing to our other front piece, or our liner, if that was your Okay, here we go. So right side's up. A great way to check if it's the right side or not is if you lift this T-piece up, there should be no twisting in the strap areas. And then you'll also see that the seams are, your stitches are behind the fabric, being hidden by the fabric. So that's always a good way to check if you've got it the right way. Okay, and then just like with the other side, we're going to line up these side pieces here, the raw edges of the side, and then we're going to sew 3 inches along this edge here, this side. So if you're using a regular sewing machine, just make sure again that you're doing a stretch stitch, lightning stitch, or a zigzag stitch because you want those seams to be able to move. Oh, this swim is fantastic. I've sewn with swim before and I'm like, pin, 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 pin. But this stuff is just amazing. It's glorious. All right, so I'm going to remember to show it this time. So what we're going to do is if you look, the back piece is a good couple of inches shorter than our front piece. So all we're going to do is we're just going to move it over a little bit so that we've got it lined up still. So instead of your seam being right at the halfway point, it's going to be moved up just slightly, which is exactly what we want. So again, 3 8-inch seam allowance. So now that, and then this will look just like the other one. So you've got the seams on the side, seams on the back, and your T is not attached yet. So what we need to do now is we need to put the lining in with the outer fabric. So we're going to put wrong sides together. Just twisted it all up again. Here we go. So wrong sides together. There we go. This goes with this. And this one I am going to clip up because there's so many loose pieces and I want to make sure we get all of them. So I'll just clip here on the corner of the T-back pieces so that those are nice and together. And then again, here on the shoulders. Because we're not actually attaching it, the liner and the outside fabric together until the binding. So we want to make sure that they don't try and move too much away from each other. And then we're just going to tuck the back in so that it ends up being like this. So as you can see, the seams are on the inside touching each other and the right sides are on the out. So the wrong sides together. Let's just line up those seams and clip at the seams. And I'm going to do the same thing to the top. All right. So there now we've got, make sure nothing's twisted up. But so our bra portion should look like this right now, where we've got the T-back. You can see right sides are both facing out. It's not attached to our bra back. And then our bra back and front are kind of just pinned together there. So if we weren't attaching the tank tomorrow, like if we weren't attaching the elastic, we'd be done today. But because I want to attach the elastic today, which I think should work, I don't think, looking through the instructions, it didn't look like the elastic needed to come later. So the only thing, if you wanted to try it on first to make sure that the bra's fitting in the right area so that it's not down too low, you do want it to be 3/4 inches longer than where you want your bra to hit, because you're going to have to sew in the elastic and then fold it up. So if you wanted to try it on and make sure that the straps were the right size, that or length, I guess that's where adding the elastic now would be kind of difficult because your back isn't attached. So if you wanted to wait on that, you totally can. The elastic's not going to be too hard to do later, and you can always come back to the video after you attach the back. But if you're with me and you're just like, I'm just going to roll with it, what we need to do is we need to take our elastic and we need to form it into a loop. So we're going to loop it over so that it overlaps. We're going to sew it so that it overlaps a 1/2 inch. I'm going to use my sewing machine or my serger. This isn't like probably the kosher way to do elastic, but this is how I do my elastic, and I've never had any problems with it coming apart or anything. And I kind of prefer it because it gives it a little bit more stability than just going back and forth with a sewing machine. But the problem with this then is that it creates more of it has a thicker seam is what I'm getting to. Whereas if you use it on a sewing machine, you can open that seam up and have it laying on both sides. This you can't. So it does cause a little bit of a thicker thicker seam. But there we go. So you can see here, nice and stable. That's how I prefer to do it, just because I don't like switching machines in and out all the time. But you just want to make sure when you do it that you're not cutting any of it while you're sewing. You don't want to cut the seams that you just sewed or the stitches that you just sewed in, because it will not help as much. Okay, so now what we need to do is I'm going to quarter my elastic. So I'm reading as I do this. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm taking my seam and I'm finding the halfway point from that. And then I'm taking and I'm matching up those two halfway points to find my quarter points. Here we go. So now we've quartered our elastic. I'm going to put one on here because whenever I don't put one on the seam, I always need it. But then whenever I do put one on the seam, I don't need it. So who knows? All right. Now, the next thing to know is that your seams are not your quarter marks. So okay. No, side seams of bra do not mark equal quarters. Okay. So since the side seams are not your quarters, what we need to do then is we need to find the middle of the front of the bra. That's going to be the easiest one right now. So just fold so that your shoulder points are meeting. And you're right there in the middle, and then that will be your quarter point for the front, your halfway point for the front. So we'll mark that. Goodness, I keep dropping it. There we go. So those are nice and even. So we'll mark that halfway point for our front. And then directly opposite that, down here, will be our halfway point for our back. So we'll mark that. And then we're going to put those two, the front and back halfway points together. And now we've got our side quarters, which are just slightly past the seams. So here's, here we go. Here's my seam, and then here's my quarter point. And then over here, here's my seam, and here's my quarter point. So they're not directly on the seams. So that's always good to know. Other words, yeah, you would have marked the seams and then halfway, and it wouldn't have been quite right. But okay, so now what we're going to do is on the wrong side, which that's what I was kind of reading and getting tripped up about, because I'm like, technically, there is no wrong side if it's, but I guess if you used a different lining, then you will have a more noticeable wrong side. So I'm going to just put it in this side. What we're going to do then is we're going to mark, or we're going to match up our halfway points, or our quarter points, with the quarter points that we marked on our bra, with putting, so the elastic will be on the inside of the bra, not the outside portion. So we're going to, so if you're thinking about it, then if your lining is attached to your main, your lining will be considered the wrong side at that point. So we're going to attach it all the way around, making sure nothing's, there we go. Same with this one here. So I guess I could see where, yeah, if you put the binding on first, it would probably, before you did this, would make a little bit more sense. And my elastic is all kinds of twisted. Okay. Here we go. That's slightly better. Not quite. Oh my goodness gracious, what did I do to this elastic? I'm like just twisting everything in this, so. Okay, there we go. Phew. Just getting everything twisted up. All right, so what we're going to do here is we are going to just attach it on the edge. So we're just going to sew the edge, the raw edge of the elastic, or of the fabric, to the elastic. So right along the edge, we're going to sew. So 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you're using a serger, you're not going to, pardon me, you're not going to cut anything. You're just attaching the elastic to the bra portion. And then what you need to do is you need to make sure you're stretching the elastic out while you're sewing so that it's nice and even stretched throughout the bra. And then we're going to flip it up and top stitch it. So, but you just want to make sure you are stretching the elastic and not the fabric. So again, if you're using a sewing machine, you're going to want to use zigzag stitch or lightning stitch or a stretch stitch, and you just want to make sure that you're pulling your elastic nice and taut so that your fabric is straight and your elastic is straight as well and not getting quite as wavy. Here we go. So like here you can see the elastic. There's a lot of slack in the fabric. So you want to just stretch that elastic out so that it's in the same. And that's why we quarter it as well, so that our stretching is even and equal throughout. So what you see, if you see my hand back here, I'm not pulling, I'm not stretching this at all. All I'm doing is simply guiding it, just making sure that it's coming out, and I'm kind of helping put a little bit of pressure on it. I'm not pulling though. That's super, super important. Let your machine do the work. All right. So now that our elastic is attached, we are going to fold it up so that it is encased. So here's the back, here's the elastic. We're going to fold it up so that it's kind of encased here, and then we're going to stitch along this line. You can do a cover stitch, a top stitch, you can do a twin needle. It's up to you how you prefer to top stitch. I'm going to use my cover stitch machine. The problem with top stitching this one is because of this gorgeous emerald color, I don't have a thread that would match it. So I'm just going to do white, which I'm glad that it's a broad and it'll be mostly encased. And then, I mean, there's white in the main fabric too, but that's the problem with this, because it creates the same kind of stitch as the serger. It has more of a textured finish versus just like a regular stitch. Top stitching in the sewing machine wouldn't be bad, but I'm not too worried because it's a bra. So, and it'll be encased. So with this, what you're going to do is, again, you need to kind of stretch that elastic out, because your fabric is going to be wrinkly from it being pulled in by the elastic. And when you top stitch, you just need to make sure it's nice and flat. So pulling it towards you. Otherwise, you're going to sew all those wrinkles into it, and it's not going to look very good. So you're not going to pull it through or anything like that. You're simply going to lightly stretch it until the fabric is taut and you don't have that wrinkling anymore. And it should just feed it right through your machine. Again, if you're not doing a twin needle on your sewing machine, make sure with this that you have a zigzag or stretch stitch. This one especially is super important, because if you use a straight stitch, as soon as you put that on and that elastic stretches out, those stitches are going to pop, because they're not meant to be stretched like that. So definitely, please make sure to use your stretch stitch. Just going through, trying to make sure I get it as close to the edge. Oh, that's spot on. Awesome. You want to sew right along the edge there, because you don't want any of the elastic poking out or anything. You want to try and get it as close to that edge of where you attach the elastic, the seam from where you attach the elastic to the bodice or bra. Okay, just taking it slow, stretching as you go, and you can see it's nice and taut here, and then when it comes towards the back, it's stretching out again because I'm not stretching this back fabric, so it's starting to get a little bit more wrinkled again, which is what you want because you want to see that that elastic is still. There we go. I was worried it might get caught up on the seam for the elastic. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip my threads from my cover stitch so that I don't run over them, because you don't, but when you run over a thread, just like when you run over a needle, what it does is it creates even just a tiny little space between your thread and the fabric, and just that tiny little space can cause the whole thing to unravel eventually or things to pull. So you got to be, I know I was always taught you can sew over pins. You can sew over needles, you can sew over threads as well. It's going to create that little bit extra space, and I don't want that. So then I'm just going over my stitches just a little bit, and then I'm going to pull my threads to the front, clip them, pull them to the back. All right, and there we have now, our bra is finished for today until we attach it to, let's just get rid of that camera, until we attach it to our tank. So what we should have today is we should have a band, an elastic band on our bra, and then the T-back still won't be attached quite yet. We'll attach that tomorrow when we attach the tank. But we have an almost finished bra, and then we will put the binding on it in our tank, and we'll be done. Yay! All right, so tomorrow we'll be doing the tank portion. Again, I think it'll be super easy. It's just attaching the tank, and then we'll be putting on the binding, and we'll be finished. Yes. All right, so I will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I cannot wait to see your finished agility tank. Bye.